You're listening to STP Radio.
Hello and welcome to another episode of STP Radio. I'm Jean Ann Harrison, and today we'll be talking to a couple of speakers for the upcoming STPCon this November in Denver, Colorado. I'm very excited to have these two speakers with me today and to discuss their sessions and pick their brains a little bit about the value of the conference like STPCon. I would like to introduce Howard Chorney and Bob Galen, and we'll start with Howard today. Howard, welcome to STP Radio.
Why, thank you. I'm a pleasure to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? You work for SOSTA, and you're an enterprise test architect. What brought you to SOSTA?
Interestingly enough, I was working on a project when I was working at a different company, and SOSTA happened to be one of the vendors on the project I was working on. I was very tool agnostic, and the project I was working on, it was a competitor of SOSTA's plus SOSTA. I really get to like the tool. I like what SOSTA was about. I love the idea of the cloud-based load testing. I think it brought a lot of interesting things to the table, especially when you want to get into some real-world testing scenarios. I mean, as everyone knows, the network plays a huge, huge part in performance testing today, especially if we're going to be testing e-commerce applications. You know, all our customers are X amount of milliseconds away, even with the advent of things like Akamai, where you'll have a lot of edge servers around. Not everything can be cached in Akamai, so obviously the network plays a great piece in that. So I think SOSTA handled that really nicely. Plus the fact that with SOSTA, you're basically paying more by the server hour. So from a load generation perspective, I mean, the size of the test I was able to run with SOSTA and have been able to run with SOSTA was just mind-blowing. So that kind of got me interested in the product, and they kind of got to know me and the work I was doing. And we just started talking, and here I am today working with SOSTA now.
Well, that leads us nicely into your session about going into checking the browsing to buying. Tell me a little bit more about what you're planning on sharing with our audience.
Sure thing. So, as you know, with an e-commerce site, or as anyone knows or should figure, I mean, what's the most important thing about an e-commerce site that we can think of? Getting your customer on the site, giving them a good experience, and then making them give you the credit card at the end of the experience and purchasing the product, right?
Yes.
So poor site performance, you're going to have a lot of attrition on your site. Abandonment, that's actually the word I'm looking for.
Right.
You have a lot of people abandoning the site in the middle of the purchase or in the middle of adding to cart or whatever, and if they leave the site, that's it. You're not going to get the revenue out of them. So that's sort of my whole topic is about, is how do we keep people on the site through entering the site to making that final purchase.
So what kind of elements are you presenting to maintain that, those customers to stay?
Okay, so that's a great question. And one of my big things is I've actually developed a methodology for testing websites, and I call it a 4-tiered approach. So what I'm going to do is discuss during the presentation or the discussion, my session. I'll be kind of walking through each tier and talking about the importance of each tier and how it actually plays into ensuring performance of a company's e-commerce website. And by the way, this isn't just e-commerce. You can actually take this methodology and apply it to other types of sites too. It's not rocket scientry. It's just real common sense. And throughout my career, I've always taken a common sense approach to things. So that's kind of where I'm going to be going with this.
Okay. I was focused on timing and load when it comes to performance. So if I think of those concepts, then I think it's something that, you can branch out and come up with different, I hate to use the word scenarios, but test scenarios to ensure that good experience for anybody who gets onto the website.
So I'm going to talk about that too. And the important thing of the scenario is making sure you're actually getting an accurate scenario. So how do we do that? There's a lot of tools out in the industry today, and it's making sure you have the right tool to actually go out and look at what pages your customers are hitting, how long they're spending on each page, what their browsing habits are. And it's getting that data off of those particular tools and transforming that data into your test scenario. And scenario is a great word, so I have no problem with using scenario.
Well, I like to use test case or a heuristic as opposed to scenarios, but it's very appropriate for performance because you do want to you want to put your focus on user experience.
Absolutely, because again, if the user's not having a good experience on your site, guess what? They're going to go find another site to go purchase the item that they're going to go looking for.
I've seen that situation many times before where the website comes up and it's very slow or it doesn't fill the page properly. And I just said, screw it. I'm going to go and do another website. And I get, frustrated with these websites where they don't appear as you would expect them to appear.
Exactly. And, there are many factors to that too. But again, the main point is making it quick, keeping in mind, making each transaction quick. And I know there's like a lot of standards around what do you do from page to page. I've heard standards of 2 seconds. And I think when you're doing most of your average browsing, quick browsing, 2 seconds page to page is probably pretty good. I think if you're doing some heavier lifting with heavier page loads, some people say 6 seconds is about right on a heavier page load. And I think most of us today who want it now, if you're spending more than 6 seconds on a page, you're gone. You're going to go find something else. So there are a lot of factors. How do you minimize the time you're going to spend on a page? How do you lighten a page? Things like this. And this is all kind of part of one of the, as I mentioned earlier, I was talking about the 4 tiers. This is all part of, one of the important parts of one of the tiers is trying to figure out how to minimize this. Mm-hmm. And then, when you're actually doing the performance testing itself, there are some great tools you can use. And I know I'll plug SOSTA here. We have a great tool that we use. It's actually a waterfall diagram. Hopefully people are familiar with waterfall diagrams when they're doing performance tests. But if you rely on some of the waterfall diagrams, that is definitely giving you some of the heavier transactions that you're going to be loading and lifting over the web. And then there are definite ways to counteract that. Well, my last company actually taught a little class in that too on some of the ways to mitigate some of the heavier page loads. So I'll probably be incorporating some of that into my discussion too.
So your session will definitely give a specific strategy for the attendees.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I want everyone to become. I become a disciple of performance testing. I've been doing this for a long time. I mean, I've been in the industry for 35 years, hardware and software. I probably made the jump more into the software side back around 1990 or so, I think, is when I kind of left the hardware realm and went into the software realm. And I jumped on the QA side because I thought that was a good natural place for a hardware guy to jump into software. Mm-hmm. I just kind of really enjoyed the testing piece of it, and I really enjoyed the performance piece of it. So although I've done a lot of functional stuff in my life, most of my career from a testing perspective has been around the performance side. So I've really been working and perfecting this over the last 20 years.
So you're somebody who loves to do puzzles because that's what I think of performance testing.
Yeah, I'm like a logical kind of guy. I'm like a forensic. Some people call me like the forensic engineer because I love to go dig deep into things and figure it out.
I think that explains a lot about me. I'm starting to get more and more interested in performance.
Yeah, performance is not to insult any audience member, but I'm not functional testing is okay. Performance is where you can do some really cool stuff.
Right. Well, yeah. Functional is, I kind of say that too with, even with mobile testing overall, is that mobile testing is so much more than functional. And yet, in this day and age with, the pushing of Agile and basically getting software out the door, everybody's into just throwing a tool at it and saying, oh, it's done. The mobile is done. And there's so much more to it. So I think that's why I'm gravitating towards performance because of that.
And so it's kind of interesting that you that you mentioned Agile too. A colleague of mine who probably is known to this community, we always joke about Agile. Some companies use Agile as an excuse to not document and do things right versus doing Agile properly. So that's kind of an interesting point. I probably won't go into that too much, but that's always in the back of everybody's mind. So I always like, when I go onto a site and they say they're Agile, I always kind of like to dig in a little bit and see what they're doing from an Agile perspective.
Well, one of our speakers coming up is Bob Galen, who will be speaking about transitioning from a traditional environment to Agile. And, that to me, I think will be a very interesting session. Just so, to see about the mobile and to see about how mobile works with Agile, as well as even in traditional environments. But I did have that very specific situation about a developer told me, and he was well experienced, said, "Oh, we don't need documentation." And I was like, well, we're a medical device company. I think we do need some sort of documentation.
Yeah, you ever been through? I guess they've never been through an FAA audit where I have. So did I say an FDA audit? I'm sorry.
Right, FDA.
FDA audit.
No,
which I have. So yeah, good luck to them when they go through their first FDA audit without having some good documentation in play.
Well, our testing team kind of helped them out.
That's good.
And that's something that I believe our testing team should do, is be of service to a certain point as much as we can to all departments and help provide what we can for the project. But what do you think that is STP is really special for doing a type of topic that you're planning on doing? I would love to hear why you chose STPCon.
Well, STPCon, I mean, it's pretty strong in the industry. It's a great way for people professionals in our industry to get together and just listen to ideas and, find out methods that our peers are doing. From the perspective of web, I mean, come on, everything's being done over the web today, right? E-commerce, just B2C and B2B are huge today, right? And I'm sure a majority of our folks the majority of people in our industry are really getting into it.
Okay.
So I think STP is the right type of audience to get more people sort of on board in understanding this.
Yes, I agree with you. There are a lot of newbie performance engineers that come to STPCon. So this session I expect to be very popular.
Excellent. I'm happy to hear that.
One more question I wanted to ask you, and me being a mobile testing person, I'm going to ask, will you be distinguishing mobile performance testing versus for mobile web apps versus the standard web app? I hate using standard, but standard web apps.
Well, a lot of people it depends on the site you're coming in on, right? A lot of people handle this. There's definitely not one size fits all for this answer, right? Because I've worked on different sites and different, again, the way the site's architected or engineered.
Exactly.
And the industry, too, could be different. Like I know banking and things like that. I mean, everything goes through one. I'm not going to say the vendor. Anyone working in banking and finance know the vendor. Everyone is really contracted with one particular vendor to do, which SOSTA actually is doing a lot of work with on the mobile side. Not just to say that, but a lot of these groups are using this particular company where other groups are more traditional e-commerce stuff. But some people handle mobile a lot differently. Some people will handle it using the same servers, and some will actually have completely different servers just for their mobility. And then you can split up mobile. What I like to call your native mobile app, which is sort of like the app you just bang on. And there's mobile web, right? So you're doing MDocs and things like that. And that may be handled completely differently. So you may have 3 different ways that a customer's going to be coming in, depending on how they're going to be coming in, right? So you really have to understand the architecture of your site. And then, I'm going to say this is a big thing, too, where people really lose sight. It's they go and test the site without purely understanding the architecture and all the upstreaming and downstreaming that's going to happen with that architecture. Now, you think of some sites where they have a lot of box stores. I mean, I worked on one site where basically what happened is each individual store handled the transaction, which is completely